My name is Carina Gardner, and I'm what you would call a practical designer. If you're ready to create a life that you love, become an incredible force for good, and generate income while pursuing your dreams, this is the podcast for you. Welcome to Make and Design. Hi designers, as you are starting your design business or your art business or whatever creative business you're working on, you'll notice that it feels a little bit hard at first, maybe exciting and wonderful and fun, but maybe a little bit hard. And the thing I always get asked is like, how do you become better? And so I've named this episode From Novice to Ninja because there really is one really clear and key thing. Now, there are lots of other things that go into it, and those are things that I cover in Design Bootcamp, but for the purpose of this episode, we're really going to only focus on one thing that has been really on my mind as people begin their design businesses. Now, one of the number one things people ask me is how long is it going to take, or how many hours a week do I need to put in? And of course, I always say, well, it depends. And here is the first depend rule. The first rule is, do you already have a design degree? Now, if you have a design degree or a design certificate, what that signifies to me is that you already know some of the software. So, of course, if you've already put in 2 to 4 years into a degree, you're going to be in better shape for starting a design business. Now, if you have never done any of those things, that's not that big of a deal. It just means you have to put the time in, right? So you're at a different starting point than someone who has already put in some time learning the software. So for a lot of designers that are brand new, we really have to learn the software in the first 2 to 4 years. And truthfully, even in our program, what we see is most people can get a pretty good handle on just Illustrator itself after about 3 to 4 months. Doesn't mean that you're expert at it. It just means that you can handle it so that you can start building products. And that is really key there. But you're going to be very different as a designer who's getting started, who doesn't know software, than someone who already knows all the software. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is, people always ask me, like, really, how much time should I put in, Carina? And this one is so difficult. And I really want to refer you to the 10,000 hour rule, because people ask me how many hours they should put in. And I'm like, well, you're going to put in as many hours as you can, depending on how motivated you are and how much time you have available. If you have young children at home, you might not be able to put in as much time as someone who is retired, right? If you are working a 40-hour-a-week job, you're not going to be able to put in as much time as someone who is not working at all. And so your side hustle is truly that. It's a side hustle. And so because of that, you really need to be thinking about instead this overall picture of the 10,000 hour rule. So the first time I ever heard this was in Malcolm Gladwell's book, Outlier, which really talks about how what we saw is that people who became outliers, people who seem to get further along faster than anything else, they put in 10,000 hours earlier than everybody else. And so what that meant is they got to expert level quickly. And so he references Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, and several other people who, because they got more playing time, because they had more time with the technology, because they put in more time at the beginning, they were able to get much faster. And this is a really interesting concept because if you've read the book, it really does point out some interesting things that make you go, I wonder how fast I can get to 10,000 hours. So if you're someone who can only put in 5 hours a week, then it's going to take you a lot longer to get to that 10,000 hours than someone who can put in 40 hours a week versus someone who's willing to put in 60 hours a week. And I know that no one likes to talk about this. They don't want to talk about the fact that the more hours you put in, the faster you're going to get there. Why? Because we're humans and we don't want to be doing something 60 hours a week. It's not that fun. It really isn't. Unless you really, really love it. And I happen to, for the most part, really love it. And so I'm willing to put in a little extra time to make it go. But yeah, it's really up to you how quickly you want to get there. It's just going to take you longer than somebody else if you choose to do it only 5 hours a week. Now, some of you might be like devastated by that idea because you're listening to this going, I really only have 5 hours a week. if you really only have 5 hours a week, it is still better to do 5 hours a week and get there eventually than to never get there at all. So I really want to emphasize that to you. Those of you who really don't have as much time, it's still better to put in some time than no time. But I also want to emphasize to those of you who say you only have 5 hours a week, and really, actually, you probably could do 20. You just are choosing to fill that time with other things that are relaxing or less important to you, or maybe, other people are demanding of your time and you're not saying no to things that you should be. The number one thing your business needs when it gets started is time. Your time. Your time is the fuel that makes a fire get going and lit, okay? If you think of your time equal to, wood, okay? So you're putting it into a fire, or oxygen, but we'll use wood. And every time you decide, you're getting started and you just don't have that much time. So all you start with are some little twigs, and it lights up and you have a little bit of a fire there. It quickly blows out when you don't put some bigger pieces of wood down in it. So maybe you put one medium-sized piece of wood in there and it starts to burn and you're like, okay, we're going. But then you don't put in any more wood. What happens? That fire goes out. It doesn't remain lit. And that's because, especially in the early days of your business, and we're talking about the early first 5 years or so, when you're not putting time into it, you're not putting wood into this fire, it very easily can go out. And then it's like starting all over again. And if you have done this before, and I know that there are certain things I have done this with, not necessarily my design businesses, but with other things, I will do this and it feels like starting over. And the reason it feels like it's starting over is because it is. And nobody likes to hear that. This is like the ugly episode where everyone's like, blah, that's me. Nobody wants to hear that you're starting over again, but you basically are. Every time you let that fire go out, you have to start over again. Because the power of a design business is in the consistency of it, the weekly placing of products up, the sheer number and volume, showing your presence, and building a brand. And your time is the fuel that makes that go. And so when you stop putting in time, even for a few weeks, especially in the early ages, so think about, we're going to go back to this wood analogy. So at the very beginning, you're just putting kindling on, right? So it feels like the fire is burning so bright, but just as quickly as it got started, it can go out that quickly because you haven't put down any foundation. There is zero foundation there. It's just a few twigs. It's a few leaves. It's a little bit of paper. It's not that much to get that fire going, but you got it going. So it's very, very exciting. And then you don't feed it at all. You don't give it the time that it actually needs. And so then it goes out. And then you feel like, I got to start all over again. And starting a fire is always harder when you're actually starting it than to just keep it going, right? Because we have to actually get the flame to get going again. And that's why it feels so hard, because it's like, oh man, I've got to get the motivation going again. I have to remember what I was doing in the software. I have to get back to it. It feels really, really hard. Versus keeping with it, adding smaller other sticks or bigger wooden pieces in there to keep that flame going. And at any point in the first little bit, and I'm saying the first several years, if you take a break from tending that fire, it is going to get smaller. It's going to be harder to turn back on again, and that flame will go out. And the fuel is still, once again, your time. And that's really hard because you guys, those of you who've come to a boot camp know I talk about time. Time is the non-renewable resource. Money is totally, seriously, I know that you're doing this to make money, but money is a thing that you can figure out how to make more of. You can. I mean, even this design business you're getting started, you're doing it to make money, right? I hope so, because that's why you'd be here with me, because I'm hoping that you're going to get it going and start making some money doing it. But it's a renewable resource. You can figure out ways to make more money. Time is a little bit tougher. Now, I know there are some ways we can renew time, but it's not as easy as drinking from a fountain of youth. And so because of that time, I understand, is super precious and putting into your design business. But you have to do it. And the sooner And the more hours you put in per week to getting it there and doing the right activities in it, the sooner you'll become an expert. And, sometimes I get asked, I just got asked this recently, it feels like that market is oversaturated. And I'm like, well, it can feel that way. It can even look that way, but you won't really know until you get into it and you see what you have to contribute. And the bottom line is your stuff has to be expert level or get really, really good in order for it to really sell well, right? So if you feel like it's oversaturated, generally it's because it's oversaturated with a bunch of like random things that the market really can't sustain because they're, no one's buying them. That happens a lot. And so it feels oversaturated when like the truth is it's just a bunch of stuff that no one's buying because the designers haven't pivoted away to figure out what actually works, what people actually buy. The moment you figure that out, things really change in the industry for you because you're like, oh, people will buy this, people will buy this. And you start making the stuff that makes the most sense so that, you actually make money doing this. So I think the thing I want to really bring your head to is the idea that being a novice is really all about time. And the way you become the ninja, the person who is expert, who's getting it done, is about adding time in. And even, the whole idea of a ninja, if you want to use that as an analogy, the whole idea of a ninja is someone who is putting in the time to learn the moves, to be stealthy, to be really good at their craft, to make the moves. And it doesn't happen overnight. And oh my gosh, I can't even imagine training to be a ninja because my body doesn't like to move at all these days, it feels like. So I can only imagine trying to go from novice to ninja. And it's really sometimes feels that hard as a designer, going from very introductory to being an expert. But I am here to tell you it is one thing and one thing alone, which is time, which is scary for some people because they feel like they can't find more of it. But I am here to remind you that all of us have the exact same 24 hours. And what I see over and over and over again is that everyone chooses to use their time differently. And because of that, that is why some people really do a good job and start making a lot of money really quick, and some people don't. It's not because they are so much better of a designer, more creative, or more artistic. Everybody thinks that that's what it is. It rarely is. It's almost always because those people have prioritized their time to make sure their design work gets done, that their stuff goes up, that they're selling it, and they've given it the time necessary to become great. Now, I'm not saying that some people aren't more expert than others. I'm not saying that some people don't grasp concepts faster than others. But what I'm saying is everybody, no matter where you're at, needs to fuel your fire with some time. And that's how we go from novice to ninjas. That's how we go from beginner to expert. And I really hope that you're doing your best to become expert because that is where the money is. All right, guys, hope you like that, and I will see you soon. Did you know you have access to more free design content, die cut files, and sewing patterns? Join our exclusive VIP group for free by going to designsweetcourses.com/free.